This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
The Revolution with Juan McCartney is sponsored by Baja Retreat and Spa, Burger King, Commonwealth Bank, Fidelity Bank Bahamas, J.S. Johnson, NUA Insurance Agents and Brokers, Bronze Electric Motors, Wendy's, and Wilmax Pharmacy.
To meet. This drowsiness runs deep. Let it be our decree. Wake each other up.
And welcome to the Revolution here on 96.9 Guardian Radio. Fresh news, smart talk all day. No, this is not Juan McCartney. This is Calhoun Ankusara, also known as Pastor Dr. Cleveland W. Eneas III. And yeah, I am taking the Revolution for a spin around the block again on another Friday, 15th of July, a rainy 15th of July. Didn't see this one coming. I thought this was going to be one of those little Passover rains, but no, this one looked like it come to, I think the Ministry of Tourism have a little package or something for weather to vacation in the Bahamas, and this storm took that invitation to heart, because I think it's going to be here for a little bit. But please be safe on the road. Drive safely. If you don't have to be on the road, then don't be on the road. But the waters are rising quickly, and I pray that those people in low-lying areas have some sandbags, and yeah, it's going to be rough. All right, but I thank you for being here with us on the Revolution, and I'm going to be talking about a little bit of what I left off on 2 Fridays ago. It didn't come in last Friday, but 2 Fridays ago, we were discussing this idea or reality of the need for religion. And I want to be clear about what, when I say religion, are all religions made the same? No. Let's be clear. No. We're moving into our 50th year as a country. I want to say thank you for those who allowed me to participate in the 49th anniversary celebrations. I had a ball, and I don't think we need to let up. I think we need to kind of keep the momentum going from 49 into 50. I see there's still some events going on. Last night they had the drumming event, which I couldn't attend, but I prayed it all went well. I'm a drummer, and I wish I had gone, but I just couldn't make it. And then I see, I don't know, weather permitting, there may be something else tonight, like a fashion-type gala. But I say that to say, as we move to 50 years, there are some conversations that we're going to have in order to progress as a nation. When we talk about, they always tell you not to talk about politics and religion. They say those two things are very provocative, and everybody got their own opinion on politics and on religion. And my brother Juan, he definitely touches the political side of things on his show. And I'm going to touch the religious and cultural side of, and not to say one doesn't touch those things either, but that's more my focus, right? And not to say I won't touch politics, but my focus is more religion, culture, etc. And so we're going to be talking about these ideas. And one of the things or places I wanted to start, and we'll continue to touch on as we are allowed to take the revolution for a spin on Fridays, right? There used to be a song that we used to sing in school. Some people may still sing it. Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them. And so I guess he had no daughters. So let's just praise, right? So we used to sing this song, Father Abraham had many sons. And we said we are one of those sons, and definitely daughters were there, right? And so I'm going to use that perspective of us being children of Abraham. And in order for Abraham to be blessed, and in order for Abraham to be considered a great nation, he had to do some things. And we as a people are going to have to do some things as the children of Abraham if we are going to be great, if we are going to be a great nation. And so Genesis chapter 12, just the first two verses, right? It says, now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country. That's big right there. Because I'm sure he loved his country. You know, Abraham would have gone to preschool and primary school and high school and would have gone to tertiary level education. And Abraham was a rich man, so he was educated. And his father was a ruler. So clearly, he would have sent his son to be educated. But Abraham is being told, you got to come out this country. And you ain't only got to come out this country, you got to move away from your kindred, your family too. Because when you decide to move, a lot of them ain't going to move with you, even though that's your family. You're going to have to move without them. And then it says, and from thy father's house. His father was influential. His father was a ruler. And he was going to have to move away from that. But where would he go? Unto a land, it says that I will show thee. Doesn't say where this land is at this point. But it goes on to say in verse 2, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. We'll stop there in the King James, right? Now, this is important because Sunday gone, as the pastor, the Holy Coptic Church of the Black Messiah here in Nassau, Bahamas, the Cajon, we preached a sermon that talks about this idea of independence. And independent countries have their own religion, right? And we're going to get into that, right? But Abraham was being asked to leave Ur of Chaldees, which is where he lived, in order to be shown something. He had to relearn something in order to be great. We in the Bahamas, if we check the population records, they will say that we are 85 to 95% people of African descent. That's how it's described. We are 85% to 90% people of African descent. And so it alarms me that a nation with 85 to 90% people of African descent don't seem to want to talk about Africa or see where Africa needs to be injected into the equation for this country to be a better place. I say that to say that in this relearning that is taking place, because we move into 50 now, half a century, learning is not always comfortable. Learning is not necessarily, and we all know this because we all had to go to school and didn't want to necessarily go to school, but you know you had to go. You know it was necessary. But this kind of learning is not about getting a piece of paper to get a job. This kind of learning is about restoring our soul as a people. Abraham is being told to leave the country of his nativity because something was going on in his country that wasn't allowing him to be great. I'm not saying we need to get up and leave the Bahamas. That's not what we're saying right now. I'm saying there's some things that we espouse in the Bahamas that aren't necessarily working with us and our majority African selves that we need to revisit. And so that's what Fridays is about this relearning, about this idea of waking up, because we are the sleeping giant. Marcus Garvey would have mentioned, as I know, you talk to some of the Rastafarian elders and they talk about this moment where Marcus Garvey in the Bahamas was saying the Bahamas would be the last to learn about who we are as a people, but the first to do something about it. Powerful prophecy. I haven't researched it. I don't have that speech, but I hold that near and dear to my heart. I know he was here. I know Sir Randall Fox talk about him being here in Faith That Move a Mountain, right? And so as I was coming in the studio today, a dear brother of mine who I shared some time with on his show, some people I think you all would recognize him when he begins to talk. But he had some questions as we were coming into the show. I say, man, this just fit in with what we're talking about, this idea of relearning. And so I want to introduce my brother C.A. Nuri to the conversation. And C.A. Nuri and I have a very, very interesting past because we always in proximity to each other, but we not necessarily in the same place. That's great. That's all right. We always close, but you heading somewhere, I heading somewhere, and we have these moments, right? And so we want to bring you all into one of these moments today. And the conversation is around this idea of relearning. And the only way you could relearn is you got a question. At least that's one of the methods that I find that works. And so, good afternoon, my brother. How goes it?
And good afternoon, and thanks for allowing me to join you today, because I know you already have a set program and stage. And I know that I had interviewed you a few weeks ago, right? Trying to understand you and your history on how you became Cahoon of the Coptic Church, right? And once upon a time, in a passing, when two ships bumped in the night, I asked a question about the origin of man. I asked a question about Genesis and the creation story. And you said something so profound. I go on research and grab some alternative books to read. And the reason why I had invited you for my show to start is to get to that point. Right. But I only get an hour show, and so much people want to talk to you. Right. But it says you have a 2-hour show, right? And I'm saying perhaps I can just nudge you and ask that particular question, which was connected to your topic for today. And I'm glad that you allowed me time to push that agenda and that question to you, so I can say, Eureka. I understand. I finally got it. Yeah. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to ask that question, put that question to you, which will be about the origin of man, right? From your point of view and from what I've read. Right. So that's that. And until you give me leeway to push that.
No worries. And so this is why at the ending of the last show that I was on, I made mention that we need religion. All right, and I'm going to get to C.A. Nuri's question in a second, right? But I want to set the table for a second, right? We need religion. Now, do we need the religion that has been weaponized against us as African people, that taught us to hate ourselves, that taught us to hate our ancestors and disrespect them, that taught us that our original ways are pagan, that taught us that to have a conversation around your Africanness is to be in some type of cult? No, that's not the type of religion we need. We have that already. And it doesn't work for us, all right? And it's not an attack on anyone's religion. That's not what the show is about. But it is an observation of what is taking place now for 49 plus years in this country of independence. I say that because in our country, we have the Church of Rome, no complaints, not collectively anyway, right? We have, and that's the Roman Catholic Church, we have the Church of Scotland, no complaints, not collectively anyway, right? St. Andrew's Presbyterian Kirk, yeah. We have the Church of Greece, the Greek Orthodox Church is here. No complaints. As a matter of fact, when they have their event where they close the road and it's a big fair, we go down there, we spend all our money and we enjoy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But at the end of the day, they're very, very clear about which country and which culture they align themselves with. Greece, yes. We have also the Church of England. No major complaints, not collectively. Yeah. The Anglican Church. Okay? And then, of course, we have others that are part of the Reformation era or come out of the Reformation era, because that's everybody out, everybody except for the Catholics, right? And I'm saying that to say that in a country that is 85% to 90% people of African descent, if we truly are an independent nation, which we are, I'm not disputing that, but as we grow into becoming fully independent, right, we have to have a discussion then about our spiritual independence. Our spiritual independence. Because if Rome and England and Scotland and Greece, if their rights and their traditions can be upheld in a divine way in a country that is predominantly African, then we still have a ways to go if we don't see the need to also see the rights, the rituals, the traditions, the laws, the commandments of Africa be held up in a divine way. We cannot sit back and ignore who we are as a people and then expect for our transition into 50 years to be one of self-empowerment or to be one of us actually controlling our own destiny. Because the destiny of a people is rooted in their spirituality. And so there's no true example of African spirituality on any major scale in this country. And it means that we, who are the 85 to 90% Africans in this country, are allowing it to happen. And so these questions, like what my brother C.A. Nuri is posing to me and to us today, is what's going to allow us to value who we are. And so we're going to dive into that question when we come back from this break. But we're here on 96.9 Guardian Radio, fresh news, smart talk all day. Keep it locked.
Saying nothing just to keep the peace does not make your pain cease. Wake each other up from the habit of the past. Wake each other up.
You do coffee your way. Double shot decaf, cappuccino.
Light roast, Colombian, no milk.
You do vacations your way.
Hiking boots, tent, mountains.
5-star hotels and theater.
And now you can do insurance your way. Online.
Email.
Chat.
WhatsApp.
Or in branch. For home, car, travel, boat, or business insurance, do it anyway with NUA Insurance Agents and Brokers. Visit NUAinsurance.com, call, or stop by a branch today.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
The King wants you to take a walk on the tangy side with the all-new Zesty Whopper collection at Burger King Nassau. Enjoy the classic Zesty Whopper with 2 types of cheese, zesty sauce, and crispy onions stacked on 100% flame-grilled beef. Or go zesty on our plant-based Whopper and crispy chicken. All 3 are saucy, crunchy, and full of flavor, and only available at Burger King Nassau. Visit any of our 7 locations and enjoy a Zesty Whopper as a combo or as part of the King's Feast at Burger King Nassau, where taste is king.
The Ministry of Tourism wishes to advise the public that Junkanoo Summer Festival has been canceled due to inclement weather over New Providence today and tomorrow. However, Junkanoo Summer Festival will resume next week, July 23rd. See you then.
Sleep. We got a challenge to meet. This drowsiness runs deep. Let it be our decree. Wake each other up. Wake each other up.
And welcome back to the Revolution here on 96.9 Guardian Radio. Fresh news, smart talk all day. Kahun Anku Sarah sitting in for Juan McCartney today. And we've been having a discussion the past few weeks on several things, religion and culture, etc. But this idea of relearning and understanding, where do we come from? All right. So my brother C.A. Nuri is sitting with me here. And Let's dive into it, bro. Let's touch on some of these. I see there's a caller waiting. We'll get to your call in just a bit, but I just want to make sure we set the table properly. And so, my brother, you had mentioned a conversation that we had. You call it 2 ships bumping in the night.
Yes.
And remind us of what was said.
So I'll set the scene up. It was a creation story, and I was trying to ascertain whether when God created man, right, and say, be fruitful and multiply. And then later on in the chapter 1, and later on in chapter 2, you come there and say, God then created Adam and Eve. And then there was the descendants of Eve. Was there 2 different men? Was that man he told to do they got to do? And then later on, did he separate a particular man, which was Adam, and have a line or lineage or a narrative or that particular line? And your response to me was, and I'm trying to give it as best I can, say, Cecil, in the Bible, it starts off, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. And then there's a narrative. But you then ask, what happened at the beginning? And you know that the preposition of in and at are 2 different times in the sequence. And I sat there and say, wait, at means at exactly the beginning, and in means a duration, a time frame, right? And said, what happened before the in? And that what we were explaining to me, and I was so intrigued that I never considered that perhaps at the beginning, there's a narrative, there's a lineage, there's a story about the history of the earth at the beginning. And later on, in the beginning, is another story, a parallel story, happened at a particular time, past tense, at the beginning. Because you know that the Word was with God at the beginning, right? And after that, there was creation. What happened in the beginning. Right. That's 2 different times. And I wanted to ask you that on my show. I didn't have time.
Right.
But since we're here now, I said, let me prod you on that.
Yeah.
Because I know there's for those who read alternative or additional scriptures, right? Not necessarily the King James version, but if you go to a Catholic church or Anglican church, you see there's the Book of Tobit and wherever it is, right? That there are other scriptures, if for lack of a better word, will tell different stories. Like there's a book of Adam and Eve, and tells a story about what happened after they were kicked out of the garden, right? There's a book about Book of Mary, right? Gives her narrative of the relations with Jesus and as a disciple, right? And I want to have those stories and have behemoths analyzed because they might not be aware of such, right? The book of Enoch and it would tell us about fallen angels. And who are these fallen angels, especially in terms of Greek mythology? Can these fallen angels be the same Greek gods who claimed to control the earth at that time? And so I wanted to know if there's any African aspects, any history from the Holy Coptic Church that would explain these things. And so let me sit in and see if I could prod you to answer one or two of these things.
Yeah. And so we're going to get into some of it. Obviously, we won't get into every aspect of it, but we do this online. When I say we, the Holy Coptic Church, we do this online every Tuesday night here in the Bahamas, and then internationally every Wednesday at 6 p.m. and then Sundays at 2 p.m. on Zoom. And you can follow our Facebook pages to get that information. But this idea of creation, first of all, we learn about it in what is called the Old Testament. And this Old Testament, which is known as the Torah, it comes from African records. Okay, this is what is not mostly taught.
So the Torah is not Jewish. You say it's African?
Definitely not.
So you can cause us get problems on this. Go ahead.
All right. And I say that based on the reality of what is called the Chewbacca stone.
Mm-hmm.
Some would say the Chewbacca stone. And I'm just reading a bit from the commentary within the original books of the Bible, the African book of Genesis. So to answer your question, there is an African reality to this, and this is why I say we need religion. Being 85% African descent, we need to understand that there is an African narrative or an African record. It's more than just a narrative, but an actual record. And this Chewbacca stone was originally inscribed 26,000 years ago. Now they'll say, oh, the earth is only 6,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
To who, though? Not
Yes.
to the Africans.
Who counting?
Right? Who counting, right? And this was on long papyrus. Papyrus, for those who may not know, just a scroll, very, very long scroll. And during the last procession, or 26,000 years, right, what happened is that one of the tribal rulers, or one of the high priests, whose name was Baba Chewbacca, which is why they call it the Chewbacca scroll, right? He realized that this scroll was being eaten by worms.
Mm-hmm.
And he understood if we don't do something about it, the generations to come will never be able to access this information. And those who come behind can tell them whatever they want to tell them. And so long story short, that information was put on an actual stone or rock, or it was carved in stone,
Mm-hmm.
all right? That stone today sits in the British Museum. So,
You mean someone moved the entire stone?
yeah, actually, when they found it, because they've ravaged our lands for, anywhere from the Pale Arabs to the Europeans. I mean, they've taken turns coming into our lands and ravaging it. This is after they came and bowed first, because you got pictures of them bowing and saying they respect and they love us and they honor us. And then they came back and took all the things or whatever they could take of what we had shown them. And so when they first found the Chewbacca stone, they thought, this is the story now, this is the narrative, because I don't believe it. They thought that it was, you ever saw when people grinding corn, and you have these two pieces of stone that actually are grinding the corn together. They thought it was like a millstone.
A millstone.
Right? Or they didn't know what it was, so they used it as a millstone, is what they were saying. But I think they were actually trying to destroy it. Long story short, it ended up in the British Museum, where it mostly is today. I say mostly because sometimes they lend it out to other museums. So I've seen it. I touch it. It's real, right? And then there are those who have taken the life's work to interpret it, right? Because it's in hieroglyphs. And in this Chewbacca stone, which becomes the first 5 scrolls of what we call the Bible, the first 5 books of the Bible today, it was originally known as the Torah. The Torah becomes the Tanakh, and then becomes the Torah, based on who is identifying with it and interpreting this story, right? Now, in this story, if we go to Jeremiah chapter 23, I think it is, right? What happens is this story of creation is cut short in such a way, Jeremiah 4, verse 23, right? This story is cut short insofar as they have what's called Bible redactors. A redactor, if you, people who are familiar with court, you may get records, or people who are familiar with classified records, they may release the records, but they may say, 500 pages of that document have been redacted. They just take a black marker. Scratch everything out, so you can't read that, right? But they are people who actually did this to the Bible. I know that sounds crazy. But you can look up, they call it the documentary hypothesis, and there are other names for it, but they talk about these parts of the Bible called J, and I'm just Googling it so I could make sure that I'm telling you the right thing, right? This documentary hypothesis, okay? And you can Google this. I'm pulling it up. It says the documentary hypothesis is a theory, also known as JEDP, that states that the first 5 books of the Bible, called the Pentateuch, consist of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, were not written completely by Moses, but by different authors. This is it's not the Holy Catholic Church. These are scholars.
Specialists and scholars around the world.
This is what they say, right? And they're right, because Moses dies in Deuteronomy 34.
And the rest of the books came out after.
Right.
Yes.
So clearly he wasn't the one who not the way they say it, right? But if you go to Jeremiah, and this is to your question of in the beginning versus at the beginning, all right? When we read, I'm going to read Genesis chapter 1, and then I'm going to read Jeremiah 4. Genesis chapter 1 says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth, verse 2, was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Got that, right? Beautiful. Now, if we go to Jeremiah 4 and 23, it says, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of the heavens were fled. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities and thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord, and thy fierce anger.
So, and I'll pause you there, because it suggests that something happened to the earth. Right?
And people were there.
And people were there before, then something happened, and the earth then became without void and form. Right? It doesn't mean that the earth was created without void and form.
Right.
But something happened.
Right.
Causing all of this. But I'll let you go on.
Yeah. We got to go to a break, producer. So we're going to come back. We're in Jeremiah 4. We're talking about the origins of man. We're talking about who we are as a people. We're going to take some calls in the second hour, but I want to get this down so we can make sure we all on the same page. All right? 96.9 Guardian Radio, fresh news, smart talk all day. The revolution. Keep it locked.
Wake each other up with that positive energy that represents you and me. It will surely germinate.
I used to think of the bank as my personal ATM machine. If I wanted a new car, new furniture, a weekend trip to Miami, no problem. Just max out the credit card or top up my loan. I was a big baller until I realized that 75% of my salary was going to pay back all those loans. Fidelity's personal financial coaching was the best solution. Fidelity gave me a plan with a debt consolidation loan that has a built-in savings that pays 5% interest. I now only have one low monthly payment plus money in my pocket. Give Fidelity Bank a call at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport. Visit any of Fidelity's locations or visit a website at fidelitygroup.com.
At Ron's Electric Motors, they repair and rewind all major brands of electric motors, including water pumps, generators, and the generator's back end, welding machines, electric lifts, air compressors, battery chargers, and more. They're equipped to handle up to 850 kilowatts and rewind up to 450 horsepower motors. They're conveniently located on the corner of Wolf and Clarence Roads and are open weekdays 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturdays till noon. They offer 24 hours emergency assistance. You can reach them at 242-356-0249.
Sugar, sugar, let's get sugary. Softer, smoother, and amazing skin. Oh, sugar, sugar, we're the sugar ladies. Giving you skin soft as a baby's. Goodbye, hair, we'll take good care of you.
Come visit us at Bahar Treat Spa on East Bay Street. Contact us at 323-6711 or visit us online at www.baharetreat.com.
The Ministry of Tourism wishes to advise the public that Junkanoo Summer Festival has been canceled due to inclement weather over New Providence today and tomorrow. However, Junkanoo Summer Festival will resume next week, July 23rd. See you then.
Saying nothing just to keep the peace does not make your pain cease. Wake each other up from the habit of the past. Wake each other up. Feel that motivating blast.
And welcome back to The Revolution here on 96.9 Guardian Radio. Fresh news, smart talk all day. Calhoun on Kusara. Sitting in for Juan McCartney on this rainy Friday. Please be safe on the road. If you don't have to be on the road, my lord, just stay home. Don't even come out. Or you may even need a jet ski in certain areas. And I'm making fun of that light of that situation because I pray people have some sandbags. That's real talk right now. You know what I mean? But we having this conversation, C.A. Nuri and I, and talking about in the beginning versus at the beginning. And the point that was being made earlier is that Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, is very similar to Jeremiah 4, 23, and just moving down that chapters 4, starting at verse 23. If you continue reading that, we're not going to read it for the sake of time, but it sounds very similar.
Yes.
To Genesis 1.
Sounds connected. Something.
Sounds connected, right? And I say that because someone in this documentary hypothesis, they talk about who wrote what and why, etc. But someone's been interfering with these scriptures, okay? And in doing so, they've moved things around. As a matter of fact, in the battle sheath that I'm holding right now from the original books of the Bible, what has been, what has happened in this particular book is that we've put those verses back where they're supposed to be.
What do you mean by put those verses back?
In looking at the scriptures from an African perspective, African scholars, we always had these records. Now, they weren't seen as our records. As a matter of fact, they told us that we only had an oral tradition until not too long ago. They started finding what's called the Malayan papyrus or the Malayan documents, which they talk about 100,000 that they found because everybody ain't giving theirs up. That's the people who say, here, y'all can read these sets.
Yeah.
So they gave up 100,000. We know that Timbuktu, which is an actual place, by the way, because people think it's not a place.
And in West Africa, no.
In West Africa, there's a university that was a part of a city that rivaled, I can't even say rival London, because it's about 2 or 3 times bigger than what London is today. All right? There's a YouTube clip where they discuss how huge this city was. I think it's a scholar from one of the Ivy League schools. He's talking about it, right? And I point this out because by the time you get into the Shabaka stone, this Genesis chapter 1 is really talking about a period after a meteorite shower.
So why do you say meteorite shower? Or could it be a period after something fell down from the sky?
Like a meteorite.
or like a bright shining star,
like a meteorite. Yeah.
Okay. Falling star.
Yeah, like a meteorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bright shining star.
So
Lucifer. Yeah.
Which again we don't have time to.
Go ahead.
That's another aspect of it, right? Because that period was also the beginning of evolution, which is different from revolution. That's a whole nother show. Okay, because things began to move in the opposite direction. Things began to decay. Things began to not be in their original form. Okay, and this had already started. This is why the Elohim or the natural Elohim, or who they call God, are stepping in and saying, okay, we got to make Adam and Eve in our image and likeness. Because we had moved away from that original likeness and image.
So this is when, separate from man being created, and he breathed in life into a new man and made this particular man have a soul separate from the original man. And my theory, I'm just throwing that out.
Right. So what happens is, again, if we look at Genesis 1, they would, scholars would say, or even many people who just read the Bible, they'll say, well, man was made first, right? That's what they thought, right?
Yes.
Except for when you go to Genesis 1, and if you go down to verse 26, let's see. I'll start at 26. And God said, the Genesis 1:26, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth on the earth. It says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. This is at the same time.
Yes, at the same time.
So this can't be the Adam that we talk about where Adam was made first, and then Eve. And Eve coming from the rib, et cetera, et cetera. This is a different Adam. All right? This takes us into the conversation, which we won't get into today, of there being more than one Garden of Eden. Because like again, these propositions come into play. There's places in Genesis where they talk about the Garden of Eden and the Garden in Eden. We ain't going there today. There's a Garden of Eden
and a Garden in Eden.
And a Garden in Eden.
Okay. I'm listening.
Right? I know we got to run to a news break, and our producer, he trying to work with these commercial breaks without breaking up the conversation. But when we come back, we're going to sum up the answer to this question, and then we'll take some calls and get some more questions, because there's only so much we could do in this short period of time. But we thank you all for being here on 96.9 Guardian Radio, fresh news, smart talk all day. Go into the news, and we'll be back right after this on The Revolution.
To be filled, break each other up. We all must have the will. Break each other up. Break each other up.
This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM.
Wake each other up. We are programmed to sleep. We got a challenge to meet. This drowsiness runs deep. Let it be our decree. Wake each other up.
And welcome back to The Revolution here on 96.9 Guardian Radio, fresh news, smart talk all day. Kahun Uncle Sarah sitting in for Juan McCartney on this rainy Friday. Stay dry, people. For those who are in low-lying areas, you may need your sandbags. So we pray that everybody is able to do what's necessary to stay dry and stay safe on the road. All right. Sitting here with my brother, C.A. Nuri, we having some discussion on the origin of man and in the beginning versus at the beginning. And I see some texts coming through. We're going to address those in a second. And I'm going to wrap up this point that we've been making for the past hour in terms of the Bible as we know it today, not necessarily starting at the very beginning. The Torah that is spoken of as a Jewish text is indeed an African record known as the Shabaka stone. Again, due to time constraints, we won't get into every aspect of that today. But it's important to understand that we as Africans have these records, had and have these records, that can give us a perspective that is not given to us by way of monotheistic religions. We started the show today by talking about how Abraham was asked to leave the country of his nativity. One of the reasons why he was asked to leave is because the religion of that country was not his own. The religion of Ur of Chaldees was the religion of Aryan Hinduism and Aryan Zoroastrianism, which did not culturally or genetically align with Abraham, who was a Cushite. Nimrod, who was the son of Cush, and this word Cush, biblically speaking, is the word Ethiopia, which is the first country that is mentioned in the Bible in Genesis chapter 2. But as an African, Abraham was not in alignment with the religion of the country that he found himself in. And so he had to move out of that country and move into this area called the Palestine-Israeli region, which was originally called the city of Kadmon. And this Kadmon is who is being called Adam at this stage within creation, when we start to talk about the Torah or the Bereshith. This Kadmon, who's also known as Zakar, and I'll prove it, because people say, where are you getting this from? If you go to Genesis 5, I'm in the Blue Letter Bible, for anybody who has it. If you go to Genesis 5, okay, this is how we'll know who they're talking about. They're not merely, Adam is a tribe.
So not a person? Adam's
No,
not a person?
no.
So who Eve is? Is that a tribe too?
She's a male and female created he, them, and called their name Adam. Her name is Adam too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Adam, when they say the word man in Genesis 2 and 7 is Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then when you look up that word in the Strong's Concordance, it talks about there being a red Adam and a black Adam coming out of the original Adam.
All these different colors in Adam.
Right. So this original African Adam gave way to a black Adam, Hindus, or the Carbonites, or the Phoenicians talking Hindus, and then a red Adam, or this group that today are known as the Europeans. Right? But when you look in Genesis 5, it says, this is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Now, this clearly is not a book. This is some verses. So there is a book. Okay? Verse 2 says, male and female created he them and blessed them and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. Well, the word male and female is not there. The word male is the word, you read it, so don't think I used to say.
No, go ahead.
What does it say? Zakar. This Zakar was the actual name, and this means one, he was the best amongst the males in his group to remember. So this idea of going back to our records to relearn or remember, that was his job.
So in West African tribes, we call that person the griot.
The griot.
Yes.
The griot.
So he was a griot of this tribe.
And all of this is coming out of West Africa, because they'll say, well, everything started in the Nile Valley. No.
Go ahead, because I find that in terms of African Americans, they tend to use Ethiopia and Egypt as
That's
a starting point.
But that ain't a starting point.
Why West African?
The Bantu, and this is a whole nother show. The
movement of the Bantus. Go
They
ahead.
started from the west, and then they moved east. That's why in the Bible they start to talk about building a garden in Eden, eastward in Eden. That's the direction they were headed. They come from west, right? That's another show. But this male was Zakar. The female is called Nekeba. Now, the word Nekeba, they'll say it means female, a woman, female child, female animal. But when you start to actually delve even deeper into the language, they'll say it means a woman of the rib. A woman of the rib. That's important because they were female scientists who were at this point in time a part of this reconstruction. And that's why the first book, that the way the Greeks give it to us, is Genesis, when you look at it from an African perspective, you're seeing gene Isis, the genealogy of Isis. And then when you go to Genesis 3:15, it talks about the woman and her seed. So this woman and her seed is what's being talked about in not only Genesis, but throughout Scripture as this righteous seed. All right? So what they did was they removed the verses that were in between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 over into Jeremiah 4, starting at verse 23, to throw us off this idea of there being an in the beginning versus at the beginning. So there have been many recreation stories. That's why in Genesis 1, they were told to be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth.
And why the word replenish?
Why replenish? Because there was something there before. This Garden of Eden is really a university called an Akhet Aten. This is the city that was built by Ankh-Anatun, and it still can be found today. The ruins of it can be found today, all right, in a place called Amarna, all right? And this is why they would say Jesus was sent to Egypt to be protected from Herod. Well, where was he going? He was going to this city called Amarna, right? If we read it from their perspective, or from the African perspective, that's where he already was. He was being born in that Bethlehem, or that house of flesh, or that house of bread, which is what the word translates into. So the origins of man as we know it, yes, you can find aspects of it in the Bible, but we have to recognize that in these times, there was no one Bible. You had different records.
So this is when when Nicene came in, or the movement of all the different popes to come to have a degree to one Bible then.
Well, at that time, what they were doing was they were protecting their tribes and their clans, the Europeans. So they were creating a narrative for themselves. Nothing wrong with that. As long as you accept or are honest about the fact that that's your narrative. But don't come beating up everybody and telling them that your narrative is the narrative.
And say, don't add to it or subtract to it.
Yeah. Even that's what you that's what you did, right? Which we're proving right now today. And so this point where we talk about meteorites falling in our African records, you're talking 17,250,000 years ago at the beginning of Genesis. That is when things began to fall. This is when this evolution is beginning to take place. You can go back millions and billions of years when you start to sit amongst those from the Dogon, when you start to sit amongst those from Sudan, not just Egypt, but ancient Africa. And we have records even in the Shabaka stone that talks about 24 billion years ago, right? Again, that's another show. I'm just putting these points on the table for people to do research. And so when you ask that question, then it leaves us then to prove that we do have to have this conversation. As a people going into 50 years of independence, if we're going to control our destiny as a country, we then have to really delve into this reality or this narrative holistically, honestly.
Or how we see ourselves.
How we see ourselves, etc., etc. If not, we can keep running like the hamster on the wheel and never really understanding where we coming from. Let's take a call. 323-6232, 325-4316, 325-4259. Caller, you are on The Revolution.
Hey, my brother, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Great. I'm listening. I love your knowledge. It's really edifying.
You give praise to the Most High, yes.
What book do you study from?
Well, we study from many different books. And I say it this way. The King James Version we utilize to teach. The original books of the Bible we utilize to live by. So there are many books that we study from. But today you would have seen us utilizing the King James and the original books of the Bible.
The original
books of the Bible. Let me explain what I mean by that. In the Zondervan King James Study Bible, there's a portion, and I'm using this reference because this is something people may be able to find, right? At the beginning of the Zondervan King James Study Bible, it talks about major representative examples of ancient Near Eastern non-biblical documents that provide parallels to or shed light on various Old Testament passages. So in those records, you have the Amarna letters, you have the Atrahasis, you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Gilgamesh epics. You have too many to read right now, right? These records were utilized to create what is called the Bible today. So the records that they utilized to create what is being called the Bible today, we know as the original books of the Bible.
And also you said Genesis 1 and a certain scripture in Jeremiah is two of the same.
So Jeremiah 4, if you read Jeremiah 4, starting at verse 23, and if you compare that to Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, you'll see that it's basically the same. And so they
how do you think that came about?
Well, we talk about these Bible redactors. Okay, if you do some research on the documentary hypothesis, okay, I will post it to my Facebook page for anybody who wants to see it, Anku Sarah on Facebook. But it's called the documentary hypothesis, also known as the JEDP. And it talks about the different authors of the book of Genesis. And let me just read it so I don't give you the wrong information. It talks about these 5 books called the Pentateuch, consisting of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, were not written completely by Moses, but by different authors.
Right.
All right. And so that ties into the African theology, where you had 4 different creation stories, as well as you had different records that weren't necessarily being kept all at the same place, but were being brought together at a place called Memphis. They call it Memphis today, which originally was called Het Kata, or the house of, they say, Ptah or Ta, the opener. And so all of this, what we call religion, is coming out of this African theology, which we wouldn't have called a theology because that's a Greco-Roman word, but it's an African record that would then allow for us to have a reference point to actually where we came from, which would then guide us into where we have to go or where we need to go.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yes, my brother. Thank you for calling. All right, now we got some texts, and we had a texter who made Brother CA and I smile, so we're going to read this one. Like, it's a couple other ones I'll read also. It says, intrigued by today's show, gentlemen. As a child, I wondered why Cain could build a city if there was no one to live in it. This sounds like a kind of question you made as a child, right?
Yeah.
Or why would he worry about being marked for execution after killing Abel? No one was able to answer the question. As an adult, I began reading for myself. Also, never thought about the fallen angels being the gods of mythology until you said it. Well, Texter, let me just say this. The Genesis 6 talks about the sons of God coming in unto the daughters of men. In that chapter, for the sake of time, I'll just give a paraphrase. When you read Genesis 6, there are 2 groups that actually come down. The first group are the disagreeable sons of God, as they refer to them. The second group are the agreeable sons of God. The first group give way to giants, because they say in that time they were giants. The second group gives way to, they say, men of renown or mighty men. That symbol of the mighty man is the ram. Okay? And a baby ram is called a lamb. And they call Jesus the lamb. Right? So he's coming out of these mighty men. I say that to say that in the story of Cain moving out into the Sauda or the outer field, yes, they already had tribes, they already had cities, they already had whole populations outside of this garden. See, because if that wasn't the case, then what would be the boundary of the garden?
There's no need for a boundary.
There's no need for a boundary. You can't be kicked out of something that
the whole world is.
Okay. So clearly there was a boundary because there was something outside of the garden. This is explained in the original books of the Bible. And it talks about that serpent not being an actual serpent, but one who was of the Aryan Hindu race, who who was a part of this university called Akhenaten, who was allowed to study there but not live there. And in studying there, he caused mischief. I'll just say it there. I'll leave it there for now because the story is lengthy and I don't have time to go into it. But again, you can always join us on Zoom or come to the Holy Coptic Church to learn more about it, right? And so Cain, when he is put out of, not the garden, because remember Adam and Eve was kicked out of the garden. The city that Cain was kicked out of was a city called Adam that is in the book of Joshua, right? And that's important. And let me just make sure y'all know where it is in Scripture, right? The city of Adam, right? All right. That's important because, so Joshua 3, verses 14 to 16, and some other places, right? That is important because when this story starts, and they say, this going back to Genesis 2 and 7, when they say they can take the dust of the earth and blow into it, and man became a living soul, etc. The dust that is being made reference to is not actual dirt. These were scientists. And these were hematologists at that. When the blood that was utilized in this experiment, because genesis, the genes are in the blood had to be stored as dust or powder. In other words, it had to be separated from the plasma, and the other components were kept in a dry state whereby it was called the dust. But they were taking, quote unquote, dust or blood from the tribes on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, as well as taking blood from those on the White and the Blue Nile. That's why in Genesis 2, it mentions the Gihon and the Pihon, or the Pishon, and the Tigris and Euphrates, because those two areas is where they were taking genetics from to create what would become this new Adam.
It's power in the blood.
It's power in the blood, the genealogy. So there was already people living along the Tigris and the Euphrates, as well as people living on the White and the Blue Nile in the African theology. And so this is why we need this reality for us as a people if we're going to know who we are. This ain't about talking nobody. This ain't about saying, we know what was done to us.
And I know you're going to go to read the next text, right?
Yeah, but go ahead.
And you mentioned that Africa in general, the whole continent, right, had a text, a version of the creation or the version of the Torah, right? When was it adopted by other people and changed narratives of something new coming into Africa?
Sorry,
I know you're talking the text.
Yeah, say it again.
Say the Torah, Torah, right, is a Jewish version of the
Tanakh. Yeah, the Tanakh.
Yes, right. And there's an African version of it.
Right.
Right. I would like to know, when did this African book become Jewish?
When the Greeks, they said they had 70 scholars. Okay, 70 Greek scholars wrote what is called the Septuagint. All right, it talks about, they call it 70, all right, and they abbreviate it as LXX, all right? And I'm just going on Google just to make sure people don't think I'm just coming off the top of my head, right? But at this point, all right, they're saying that it's a Greek version of the Jewish scriptures. And it was written in the 3rd and the 2nd centuries. But who was ruling in the 3rd and the 2nd centuries in that part of the world? This would have been your Caesars. And so these Caesars were taking the original records of atonism. Now, how do we know this? The church father, I've said this before, St. Augustine, he talks about, we talked about on your show,
yes,
Christianity before Christ, 10,000 years before even this Septuagint was written. So what they were doing was taking the records that were originally written by the Africans, not using the records per se, but utilizing the template of it, the verse template. And what they were doing was they had a historical Bible, which was written by Josephus. And they took that historical Bible and made it a religious Bible. And so when we say JC as Christians, in the Bahamas, we mean Jesus Christ. When these Caesars say JC as the Greco-Romans, they're saying Julius Caesar. And so it was a very subtle and clever plan to get the indigenous people to move away from the original scriptures and begin to recognize the Greco-Romans as their God, which we still do today. We swear to the Queen and heirs and successors forevermore. You see? So that was one of the points where they began to do that. And they did it in what's called Paleo-Hebrew. That's not original Hebrew. The Yiddish, that's German. They did it in that language. And it was one of the languages that they actually colonized Northern Africa with. When you go to the book of Isaiah chapter 19, verse 18, it says there were 5 cities in the land of Egypt that spoke the language of Canaan. And so one of the war tactics is for you to not speak your language, but speak the language of the colonizer, which is why you speak English today. Yeah. All right. Let's run to another text, and then we're going to jump to the phone lines right quick. There was another one I wanted to touch on. Let's see. Yeah, okay. It says, Uncle, here is what I propose as a subtopic today. And I'll have to do another show on this, but I just want to touch on it. The Webb telescope just showed us images of millions of galaxies and billions of planets. My question to you is to discuss religion in the context of all these billions of planets with possible intelligent extraterrestrial life. What does it mean in Genesis when it said to make man in our image? Who is our? Okay, that's 2 questions. Quickly, if we go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, in relation to all of these stars and everything that the Webb telescope is showing us, right? It says in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14, that God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. Now, what is this talking about? This is talking about what the African theology is based on, which is called solar biology. In solar biology, you have the oldest cosmological and astronomical map of the stars, and you find this at a place called Dendera. You can look it up. It's Dendera. All right, and this Dendera, just make sure I'm giving you the right spelling. Denderah. This Dendera has the map of what is called the stars. One of the places that you can find it today is in the Louvre in France, in the Louvre. I went to the Louvre, and they was on strike that day. So I was quite ticked off. Come all the way to France.
Yeah, all the way in France.
But so this map of the stars, it correlates with the doctrine insofar as if you look at a periodic table today, they give it to you as a square, but it really was a circular design, which correlated with the fact that in our bodies are all of these elements which ultimately create or make us who we are. And it talks about this Dendera being a way for us to chart our lives and to chart our reality in what becomes religion. So everything that you're finding that the Webb telescope is pointing at is mentioned in the original books of the Bible. And it talks about it if you go to the book of Job, chapter 9, verse 9, where it talks about Pleiades, it talks about Arcturus, it talks about Orion, and it talks about Mazzaroth. And that Mazzaroth in the book of Job, and I think Job 38, verse 32, the word Mazzaroth is an actual, it means the zodiac or the constellation. It talks about the 36 constellations of the zodiac. And those 36 constellations of the zodiac are in relation on earth to the 3 groups of 12 royal tribes of Ishmael, Israel, and Midiani. 12 plus 12 plus 12, or 12 times 3 is 36. And so there was a relationship to these stars on earth by way of the 3 groups of 12 royal tribes. And so everything that the Webb telescope is talking about, we have in the records and more. All right? Now, when you say who in our image, the hour is talking about the African guardian angelic host, the Naturu Elohim, who put these records in place by way of the Shabaka stone and other records. This is why the story starts in Ethiopia. So if you want to know who R is, just go back to where the story started. It started in Ethiopia with people with 3 and 4 finger nose. What I mean by that is if you take 4 fingers and put on your face, your nose gets spread.
Yes. Mhm.
The woolly hair that's talked about that they say Jesus had in Revelation 1. The dark skin they say he had in Daniel 7 and 9. It's talking about African people. You understand? Now that doesn't mean that other people don't matter or don't have records. The European records are called the Prose Edda. All right, and they have a creation story and they have their own records. We know them as the Adam son of Europa, and within those records, it explains their creation story. The Hindus have their records, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, all these different records that they have, and those records are respected as those people's records. We too have our records. All right, and then we got to run to a break. We'll get some more texts, get some more calls in. 96.9 Guardian Radio, fresh news, smart talk all day. The Revolution with Kahun Uncle Sarah sitting in for Juan McCartney today. Keep it locked.
Saying nothing just to keep the peace does not make your pain cease. Wake each other up from the habit of the past. Wake each other up. Feel that motivating blast.
We're good for you.
We know how important collecting your money can be to the success of your business. Start your relationship with Fidelity today so that we can show you the many options available to you with our merchant services. From click and pay options online to merchant terminals and e-commerce options. We're here to help your business succeed. For more details, speak to one of our business development officers at 356-7764 in Nassau or 352-6676 in Freeport. Visit our website at fidelitygroup.com or visit any of our branches.
When it comes to picking a pharmacy that is convenient, reliable, and puts you first, only one name comes to mind: Wilmax Pharmacy. A team of trusted and trained pharmacists ready to serve and assist you with all your pharmaceutical and over-the-counter needs. We also carry beauty and hair products as well as household and everyday supplies. Open 7 days a week, 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. NIB drug plan is accepted. Cut down your wait time. WhatsApp new prescriptions and refills to 817-4067. Visit Wilmax Pharmacy today. Poinciana Drive, opposite University of the Bahamas. Call 323-1037.
Here we go. J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents are the best. Reliable service, we've been on the scene, protecting since 1919. J.S. Johnson Insurance has the test. You're always covered me. J.S. Johnson Insurance, peace of mind.
Baja sugar, sugar, let's get sugary. Softer, smoother, and amazing skin. Oh, Baja sugar, sugar, we're the sugar ladies, giving you skin soft as a baby's. Goodbye hair, we'll take good care of you.
Come visit us at Bahar Retreat Spa on East Bay Street. Contact us at 323-6711 or visit us online at www.baharetreat.com.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
Wake each other up. Stand and be committed. Wake each other up.
Back on the Revolution, 96.9 Guardian Radio, fresh news, smart talk all day. Let's run right to the phone lines. Caller, you are on the Revolution.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Ankusara and C.A. Nuri.
Yeah, brother 52.
I spin around the block with Daddy Vishay, I remember. But anyhow, yeah, man, listen, Anku, some orientation, I know what you're saying, and I agree with everything you said, especially Epic of Gilgamesh, Utnapishtim, right? And there are other ancient civilizations with these same stories of the flood. Now, we have to study the word etymology of the words because that's why we're being swung. So the word Adam, I was told that it means male and female, but then when I really checked with the Hebrew meaning, it means son of the red earth. And so when he said he made Adam, it'll be both male and female. But I'm always confounded and had questions to ask as to, the Bible only specifically talks about Ishmael and Isaac, which would be Esau, and Jacob came from Isaac. And Abraham had 8 sons, and he is known as the father of all nations. And of course, you mentioned he come from Ur of Chaldees, which would be Iraq. And I noticed they have other ancient names, like they'll call it Babylonia, Mesopotamia, Sumer. But the thing is, I like how you put it all together as far as I know the religion was stolen from Africa, because I juxtapose the fact that Aramaic and Hebrew, right, they were able to communicate with one another. All right, and I was always wondering that, and then we saw how they hit the dynasty of the black Nubian pharaohs. Now I wanna thank you for rescuing C.A. Nuri, right? Because I'm looking at why do we have so much black people in the Catholic Church? Because I wanted you to comment on this. If it's one thing you could remember when I hang up, transubstantiation. This is the only religion that does that. And the Pope have this, he declares himself the vicar of God, right, or a vicar of Christ. And in the transubstantiation, he has the power to excommunicate and connect people with God, which I think is foolishness. And then also the fact that there's something that I really never hear anybody talk about that upset me the more I learn. We know about Opus Dei. I know what it means from Latin, but unum sanctum, right, which one one holy or most holy, right? And I read up on the doctrine of unum sanctum by Pope Boniface VIII, I think back in 1300 or something like that. And he declared himself supreme ruler. It has something to do with him and Peter, right? And he's a supreme ruler of the earth and authority over all temporal beings and land, etc. And I just want to know if this still is in existence, because this is why they have so much influence. This is people go to the papacy, and you listen to the speech by George Bush, and he said that they asked him how he felt when he was talking with the Pope. He said he felt like he was talking with God. He looked into God's face. So I just want you to comment on those quick things. And is I don't think, what is the difference between a Hebrew and a Jew? Because it's used interchangeably, which I don't think is any different. But I know Abraham is classified as a Hebrew. So let's talk about Jew and Hebrew. Just clarify some of these things for me, please. Bless up.
All right. So thanks for the call. I'll leave the last one. That's another show. Hebrew and Jew. We'll talk about who the Gentiles really are. Maybe we'll do that next week, right? Who are the real Gentiles?
Yeah, from up north.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
See, I remember that.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about transubstantiation, right? They define it as the conversion of the substance of the Eucharistic elements into the body and blood of Christ. At consecration, only the appearances of bread and wine are remaining. What we had and still have in the African theology of atonism is what is today referred to as alchemy. And this alchemy, they would say, is the transmutation or the transformation of base metals into gold. They'll say lead into gold, all right? Or the changing of molecules. They'll say the first miracle that Jesus did was to turn water into wine, which was a form of alchemy, right? This alchemy ultimately is where we get chemistry from. And chemistry is the study of these elements that are necessary for life as we know it. All right. They say it's a branch of science concerned with the substances of which matter is composed. So if the Pope has the ability to change the bread and the wine into the blood and the body of Christ, that's a form of chemistry from their perspective. I'm not knocking it. That's what they do. That ain't my business. I'm not a Catholic, right? But it is talking basically about chemistry, the root word of which is chem, which comes out of the line of Kemet, or the line of the blacks. And we didn't call ourselves blacks because there were no white people around to juxtapose ourselves to. We understood that all life came out of the black, or all life, because they say God created light, which means God had to be in darkness. Or you look up into space and you see black, and the most predominant substance in the universe is black matter. So we understood that we were a part of that black matter, or we were a part of this living ether that was the composition of all chemicals, gases, nutrients, vitamins, etc., known in existence. That's still a part of what we are, and our melanin as a form of solid light. Melanin is a hormone that ultimately is something we'll talk about again on another day, but it's not just color, all right? And so this idea of transubstantiation is what we originally understood as alchemy, and it comes out of this solar biology that we just talked about earlier, based on the fact that it is talking about the changing of these various elements, and each element had an attribute or has an attribute, and as well as a guardian angelic host responsible for uncovering that particular element. These were scientists called alchemy. And so the Greeks and the Romans wanted to do the same thing, and so they have transubstantiation, which is their business. I have nothing to do with that. All right. Interesting text here. It says, "Hello. Now I know you don't know what you are talking about, because the Bible couldn't have been talking about African people, because that concept came about in the 17th century and only after colonization by Europeans. Please stop spreading lies." So, thank you again, Texter, for texting in. The word Bible, I always ask people is, how do you know you're reading the Bible? Because the word Bible is not found in the Bible.
No, and more like it's just a collection of books.
It's a collection of books, but we can just do a quick etymological search on the word Bible, right? And we could see what it says. It says a lot of things. The scriptures of the Old and New Testaments, the Ta Biblia, the holy books. The Latin word is from the Greek, one biblion, paper scroll. So again, who had scrolls? Africans had scrolls. Also the ordinary word, a book of division of a larger work. It also talks about, and I'm just scanning through because, again, I don't have time to read everything, right?
But I think the text was what was concerned about the term African. Why?
No, and I'm explaining why we're relating the term African with the word Bible, because they're saying that this word Bible ultimately is a word that it means a scroll, right? It comes from biblio, right? And this word biblio, again, they say is paper scroll. And the word biblos means Egyptian papyrus. So the word Bible means Egyptian papyrus. So it's not me just making this stuff up. The word itself means, or comes from a word that means.
Or from an African word.
An African word. Okay? And I think it's important, again, to have those types of questions. I appreciate it, Texter, because I thought the same way at one time.
But were the continent or the people of the continent of Africa, which is Ethiopia, and then they go to West Africa and the Bantu people moving, what did they consider themselves as? Because, they didn't look at themselves as being black because there weren't any...
There was nothing to compare yourself to.
But call them African. What would they have called
We
them?
were known by so we were Nubian, because this word noob or nub, they would say it means gold. They would say it's different interpretations of what the word means. But the land that we were in, was called Nubia. And we were composed of melanin. So we were referred to ourselves in some instances as Nubian melaninite. So that spoke to where we came from and what we are composed of.
But that's still different from Ethiopia, which is a tribe or adjacent tribe to the Nubians.
But when you say Ethiopia, you're saying ether, utopia. That ether goes right back to the same melanin. A utopian for the melaninites.
And then we go now, I'm moving downwards.
Yeah,
because I'm going to go West Africa.
Yeah.
I want to get myself into this.
Yeah.
They have the people of Ghana. They have the people of Nigeria.
Right.
And which is separate and apart from the Nubians, separate and apart from the Ethiopians.
That would be the thought.
Who was, all Africans when you put
Right.
United Africa.
Right.
But what would our narrative in this whole thing?
Right, because we are the children of, and they talk about in Matthew 26, verse 31, it says, the shepherd will be struck and the sheep would scatter.
Okay.
The tribes of the Pele, the Loma, the Yoruba, the Ife, the Ashanti, these are all children of that shepherd Asaru. Asaru, as we talked about on your show, is mentioned not as Asaru, but as this lamb in Revelation 13, verse 8, who was crucified or butchered at the foundation of the world. Jesus Christ didn't get crucified at the foundation of the earth or the world, they say in Revelation 13 and 8. So it's talking about an original crucified Savior who had these 3 groups of 12 royal tribes that ultimately come out of his teachings. And they scatter. The ones in West Africa, where we come from, Nigeria, Ghana, etc., are just as much a part of the story as the ones from Ethiopia. But we have to now make the connection through our records. You understand? And that's our time.
And that's why I thought we had about 7 more minutes.
Yeah. What we doing? He's just taking a commercial? All right, we're going to take a commercial.
I want to see who this caller is.
Yes. Let's run to the break and be right back. Keep it locked.
Wake each other up. Wake each other up. With that positive energy.
At Wendy's, spicy means Wendy's spicy. Unlike the other guys, our spicy activates all your senses. For a taste of Wendy's spicy, try the new Chipotle Crunch Cheeseburger made with fresh beef, or the new Chipotle Crunch Chicken Sandwich, both with delicious crispy jalapenos, Chipotle aioli, cheddar cheese sauce, and much more. Taste the Wendy's spice in every bite of irresistible Chipotle Crunch chopped fries too. Stop in today for the flavor you crave. Wendy's, different inside and out.
The Ministry of Tourism wishes to advise the public that Junkanoo Summer Festival has been canceled due to inclement weather over New Providence today and tomorrow. However, Junkanoo Summer Festival will resume next week, July 23rd. See you then.
You do coffee your way. Double shot decaf, cappuccino.
Light roast, Colombian, no milk.
You do vacations your way.
Hiking boots, tent, mountains.
5-star hotels and theater.
And now you can do insurance your way. Online.
Email.
Chat.
WhatsApp.
Or in branch. For home, car, travel, boat, or business insurance, do it anyway with NUA Insurance Agents and Brokers. Visit NUAinsurance.com, call, or stop by a branch today.
Feel that motivating blast. Wake each other up. Don't be distracted. Wake each other up. Stand and be committed. Wake each other up. Wake each other up. With that positive energy that represents you and me, it will
back to the revolution here on 96.9 Guardian Radio. The song you're listening to, someone was asking, that is Paul Hanna. Wake Up. You can find it on YouTube. And
Paul Hanna Bahamian or Paul?
Oh, yeah, Paul Hanna Bahamian. That is Paul Hanna, my brother. Oh, okay. Paul and Tanya Hanna. I can't say his name without Tanya, but it's Paul and Tanya Hanna.
Artist?
The artist, yes. That is Bahamian music right there. Yeah.
I'm impressed. I was moved. Yes.
Yeah, man. That's gonna be like my theme on Fridays, right?
Okay.
All right, just quickly through some text, and then we're gonna run straight to the phone line. You need your own Revelation show on radio. Good job.
Yes, you do need one.
Yeah, man, that'd be great. Let me try to get the earlier ones. Good day. In the fact that we are reluctant to learn about Africa, one can only look at the explosion of Afro beats and its originality. I am one who wishes to travel, and my finances may have it also invest in an African country. I am one who is intrigued and enlightened. I appreciate you listening. I agree with you, man.
There is an explosion of Africa again.
That's true.
Straight across the world.
Yeah. This one says, the text is so lost, Uncle. We need to slap. I mean, he ain't slapping no one, man. My Lord. But yeah, some people, the reason why we having these conversations is to help anybody, you know. So I don't get mad when people say, stop spreading lies. You know, that's their feeling about it, but we counter it with information. Afternoon. Our history also extends to the point before Africa and America separating the true ancient texts have this sort of, that's right, and that's in the original books of the Bible. Mm-hmm. All right. Uncle, you are the equivalent to Harriet Tubman. Wow. All this knowledge that you are giving us for free still won't make a difference because most Bahamians will never give up their white Jesus. Keep up the good work, bro. I pray that ain't the case. I guess I need to start charging it. Great show, my brother. My question is, do you think the earth was redone several times so far? Definitely it was. We ain't gonna get into that today, but that's another show.
Remember, I just asked for that.
You just, I thought you text that.
No, okay, Master, go ahead.
Let's run to the phone lines before we got to get out of here. Caller, you on the Revolution.
Good afternoon
Good
to you, Uncle, and to Yuri Namastu.
Namastu, yes. Thanks for calling.
I found the contribution by 52 to be right in line, almost to the word,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of a discussion I had recently. You may not know who this is now, but I'll reach out to you on Facebook.
Sure.
But my comment is more in line with one of the previous episodes that spoke about our people still wanting to cling to this white Jesus, even when surrounded by the abundance of information that is now available through the smartphones that they use to gossip. They can take that same device and research not only about the Bahamas but about history.
Yeah.
The sad thing is most of them do not even understand that astrotheology is the thing, and it's basically laid out in the Bible.
Right.
And I hope the last comment or text that you got, the gentleman was espousing the idea that you should charge. Again, it's a tempting also, but when you've been tasked with this kind of work, the focus of it is the love of our people, ensuring that they get right information.
Yeah, we say at least support the ministry. That's all we say. Support the ministry so it allows us to do the work. Yeah.
That's good. But just continue to be encouraged.
Thank you. Thank you so much for calling, man. Got to think one more caller before we got to get out of here. Caller, you on the Revolution. Good afternoon.
Okay.
Doing well.
I don't pull you up, okay?
No problem.
So I'm listening to you, and I understand what you say because, again, I read my Bible and I pray.
Mm-hmm. Speak up a little bit for me, please.
Okay, like I'm saying, I'm listening to you and I'm understanding what you're saying because I read my Bible and I pray. And, when you read your Bible, you tend to see, it look like patches, and from one chapter to another chapter, you'll see, okay, disconnect.
Right.
So you're telling me there's no Almighty God?
No, never said that.
No, I'm asking.
No, there is a Most High Heavenly One. All praises to the Most High Heavenly One. And we intend as the Holy Coptic Church to bring the message that was originally intended for the people of the Scriptures. We call it the people of the book.
Okay, now, the Bible says in the beginning that us make man, and you're saying us is a set of people, correct?
Correct.
It's not the Almighty who created, the world and whenever the beginning was.
Well, what we're saying is that the Elohim, that word Elohim doesn't mean Most High.
Okay.
All right? The Elohim are children of the Most High.
Okay.
And so they, by extension of the Most High, are creating, and so the Most High would have created by extension of them.
Okay, now, do you agree that there's the Holy Spirit?
Yes, we say the Spirit of truth. The Spirit of truth, yes.
No, because I believe in the Holy Spirit because I was reading the Miles Monroe book, and he was talking about three entities: the spirit, the body, and soul. But I disagree with him at some point because I believe the spirit, the body, and the soul are one. The spirit may be like I was saying to myself as I read, as a child, right from wrong. Now I was assuming when he's writing, he meant the spirit was that. Now the soul is what I guess moves the body, and the body is the body. Because you're saying Satan's trying to get the body.
Right.
Because my perspective is, like a child, my babies, they tend to peep before they do because they know. Because you know right from wrong.
Yeah.
There's no oops.
Right.
Okay? Now the soul may be what keeps you calm, what harms you. You understand me? And the bodies would react. Okay? Now I'm glad that you said there's a Holy Spirit. And I'm glad that you said there's a God, because if you said there wasn't, you would have to have a conversation with me privately.
Right.
No, because there is a God. Because
Yes.
I love to tell people when you're going through something, because, we're very stressed now, if you have no one to talk to God. Even if you don't know who God is, you will build a relationship with God. Because I believe in there's a God, and I believe in there's a Holy Spirit, a comforter that comforts us
So
Okay.
we on the same page, my sister. We just, the perspective may be a little different in terms of whether it's an African perspective or a Greco-Roman. But that's something that definitely can touch on one of these Fridays. And I thank you for calling. We're out of time, people. This has been The Revolution. I want to thank my good friend C.A. Nuri for being on the show with me. And I want to thank you all for calling and texting. My name is Calhoun Anku Sarah, also known as Pastor Dr. Cleveland W. Enius III, the head priest of the Holy Coptic Church in the Bahamas. We are under the auspices of the Holy Coptic Church International, led by our Basesh Hotep Tar, known as the Rev. Dr. A.J. Mama. I want to say Namaste, which means I bow to the divinity in you. Have a great day. Stay safe. Stay wet. Stay dry.
Break each other up. Break each other up.